Showtime 112 is a Trustmaster ambassador. Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. With the development of air-to-air missiles in 1950s, many believed that days of dogfights were over. There would be no more close maneuvering in order to get on your opponent's tail and shoot his plane with your guns. F-4 Phantom, which entered service in early 1960s, was a direct result of such thinking. It was fast, not very maneuverable, and it had no internal gun. But as the first combat encounters with North Vietnamese MiGs clearly showed, days of dogfights were anything but over, and gun was still very useful to have. US Air Force responded by ordering that third Phantom model, F-4E. Besides having upgraded avionics, the main difference compared to earlier C and D variants was M61 Vulcan cannon installed under the nose. This rotary 20mm cannon had a very high rate of fire at about 6,000 rounds per minute. F-4E, the Phantom with a gun, entered service in June 1967, and it didn't participate in the Rolling Thunder campaign. It first saw combat in November 1968, attacking targets along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. F-4E had to wait until 1972 to see its first combat with MiGs. F-4E claimed its first 2 kills on 23rd of May 1972, and one of them was achieved with the M61 cannon. This wasn't, however, the first time that a Phantom scored a gun kill. 9 of them had previously been achieved with guns carried in external pods. This gave Phantom pilots an additional option, but it was a rather awkward solution. It occupied the pylon, which usually carried a 600 gallons fuel tank. It increased drag, reduced speed, and it was quite inaccurate. Pilots had to rely primarily on tracer rounds to adjust their fire. June 1972 brought an increase in MiG activity. On 2nd of June 1972, about 250 US aircraft were flying over North Vietnam. A large portion of them was assigned to a search and rescue operation for Captain Roger Lockher, a Phantom Wizzo whose airplane had been shot down by a MiG-19 on 10th of May. Major Phil "Hands" Handley was leading the Brenda MiG-cap flight, about 40 miles northeast of Hanoi, covering the rescuers. His weapon system officer was First Lieutenant Jack Smallwood. Brenda flight consisted of 4 F-4Es from 58 Tactical Fighter Squadron based at Udorn, Thailand. After spending some time in the rescue zone, Handley's radar warning receiver suddenly came alive with a SAM warning.
We lost the SAM. Okay, we got a launch flat. Brenda, let's turn into it. We got the flat.
Brenda flight dropped their fuel tanks and turned into the threat, trying to locate the missiles visually.
I don't see that fucker. I don't either. Brenda, these trees gonna turn east.
The alarm turned out to be false, but the evasive action cost them precious fuel. The second Brenda element called bingo fuel and had to turn away. Handley and his wingman, Buddy Green, remained on the cap station alone.
Okay, Brenda, let's reverse course back east.
Another warning came.
Brenda, warm bottom. Final will be on your 167 and 8. Possible 167 and 8. Copy that.
This time from the radar controller, informing Handley of bandits 8 miles away at 130 degrees low. Handley and Green immediately turned into the new threat. Handley's Wizzo, Smallwood, was attempting a radar lock, but the Phantom's pulse-only radar had trouble distinguishing targets against the ground clutter. But as the Phantoms were approaching the 2 MiGs, Buddy Green, Handley's wingman, reported bingo fuel.
Red ground, Brenda 1. Where's the bandit? Brenda 2 is bingo. Stand by, you're in the dark, estimate.
The 2 Phantoms disengaged and headed towards the Gulf of Tonkin. But as Handley was checking his Wingman 6, he spotted a sunlight reflection at 4 o'clock low. This very likely came from MiGs.
Okay, I've got a MiG-21 in our 3 o'clock low down there, Brenda 2, close to the other wing. He may try to pop up on us.
The Brenda flight crossed the wings, and Handley soon had a visual confirmation. There were 2 silver MiG-19s at about 8,000 feet distance and 10,000 feet of altitude at his 4 o'clock position. Handley told his wingman to disengage, while he would try to attack the MiGs alone. Green replied he would stay with him.
Okay, I'm going to take one quick run at him, too. You continue on out. I'll stay with you.
Handley engaged full afterburner and turned into the MiGs, resulting in a 9G maneuver. He quickly achieved the supersonic speed, which he maintained throughout his dive.
Brenda 1 out. Low light 1 was up, Brenda exiting the area. Negative, Brenda 1's on a MiG-19.
Buddy Green, on the other hand, climbed to a higher altitude to try to conserve fuel. Instead of continuing this attack, the MiGs turned down and left, approximately south. Handley was able to put his Phantom behind the MiGs at about 2 miles of distance. Handley's airplane was carrying 2 AIM-7 Sparrow missiles in the rear wells, 1 ALQ-87 ECM pod in a forward left missile bay, and 2 AIM-4 Falcon missiles under the wings. Vietnam-era missiles were notoriously unreliable, but the Falcon had an even worse reputation than Sparrow and Sidewinder. It only achieved 5 victories out of 54 launches. Handley asked his Wizzo to activate the 5-mile bore sight radar mode, which successfully achieved the lock on the rear MiG. Handley launched both of his AIM-7s. One of them simply dropped off as its motor failed to ignite. The other failed to guide and missed.
There it goes.
Handley selected his second weapon, AIM-4, and heard a tracking tone. One of the missiles never even left the rail, while the other one failed to guide, just like the Sparrow previously. The MiGs were now clearly aware of Handley, and they tightened their turn to the right. F-4E still had one more weapon, M61 cannon. Aiming at such deflection isn't easy, as your own airplane nose obstructs the view. Both Handley and his wingman observed the MiG catching fire and losing fluids. It eventually crashed into the ground as Handley zoomed up to 15,000 feet. No ejection was observed.
Gun. Okay. You get him? Yeah. I got him. Look the gun. All right. Let's get out of here. Okay, go, baby.
Let's get out of here, Brenda. He's closing his six right now.
What do Vietnamese sources say about this engagement? Istvan Topercer, in his MiG-17 and 19 Aces of the Vietnam War, puts a question mark on the American interpretation. According to him, the MiG-19 pilot, Phan Trong Van, was killed when his plane was mistakenly hit by a surface-to-air missile. On the other hand, the Vietnamese author Dong Sai Hung gives a different story in his book Combat in the Sky. According to him, 4 MiG-19s were assigned with defending the Dong An electrical transformer station that day. As they penetrated through top of the clouds, they saw 2 F-4 sweeping in at them and firing missiles. The number 4 pilot warned Senior Lieutenant Phan Trong Van to brake, but he had no time to do so, and his plane was hit by a missile. Phan Trong Van was killed. The remaining 3 MiG-19s then engaged the Phantoms in a ferocious dogfight until they were ordered to break off the engagement and land at Ja Lam airfield. While this version is not a perfect match for the American one, it nevertheless confirms that a Phantom shot down a MiG-19. Missiles are much easier to spot than gunfire, and Vietnamese pilots could have believed that one of them was responsible for the shoot-down of their colleague. Phil Handley flew 275 combat missions in Southeast Asia in the F-4D and F-4E. He retired from the Air Force in 1984, having also flown such types as F-86 Sabre, F-15 Eagle, and even C-130 Hercules early in his career. He died in 2019. His gun kill from 2nd of June 1972 is believed to be the only supersonic gun air-to-air victory ever achieved. Thank you for your time and keep watching Showtime 112.